Hello everyone, Mr. K here again. We're going to talk about code readers and scanners today. This is a very in-depth topic. We're going to talk for days about it. So today it's just going to be an intro, talking about what they are, what they do, why we need them, and how they differ a little bit depending on what year range of car you're working on. This is going to be part one, and we're going to be talking mainly about OBD1 and OBD2 systems. If you don't know what that means, that is not a problem. Okay. So first, we're going to talk about terminology. Unfortunately, there's a lot of acronyms, a lot of terms, abbreviations that are used when we're talking about scanners and code readers. We're going to talk about OBD1 and OBD2, excuse me, and as well as types of code readers. So let's talk about terminology. All right, we're going to try to hit them one at a time here, and I hate to put all these on one slide, but they're kind of all related and they're all important. So OBD1 stands for Onboard Diagnostics, Gen 1, okay? OBD2, you guessed it, Onboard Diagnostics, 2nd Gen. CEL, how about Check Engine Light? And you will see these a lot. Unfortunately, you're going to see these terms a lot when you're using scanners and code readers. MIL, you can just think of that as a check engine light. Technically, it stands for malfunction indicator light. I would love to say that you see this on just foreign cars, but that's not true. Now that if you're looking in the new Ford manuals, they call it an MIL. Don't know why. Don't know what was wrong with CEL. CAN, controller area network. You guys won't need to know that as much, but you will see it. DTC, you'll see this a lot. Data trouble code, or just a code. ECM, ECU, PCM, engine computer, I'm just going to call it that. Powertrain control module, engine control module, engine control unit, a lot of names for it, but it's just the computer, computer for the engine. PID, you're going to see this a lot, unfortunately. Parameter identification. Okay, ones I want you to remember for the test: OBD, so onboard diagnostics; CEL, check engine light; MIL, you can just remember that equals CEL; and of course DTC, because you're going to see that all the time. A little bit more here. Bidirectional communication. Okay, basically what this means is if you have bidirectional communication with a scan tool and your vehicle, it means that not only can your vehicle tell the scan tool what's wrong with it or what its codes are, but the scan tool can tell the vehicle to do something also. It can tell your vehicle, turn the fuel pump on, turn it off, raise the rear air ride suspension, lower it, that type of thing. It's bidirectional communication. Current code, and there's a long definition for these, and I just try to keep them simple. Something is wrong with the car. Okay, if the computer gives you a current code, something's wrong. Pending code, something might be wrong. It's still trying to figure out if something is wrong. It's still running tests. History code, something used to be wrong. Okay, and the classic example of a code is I can't remember the number, but it's an evap emissions thing. And basically it means your gas cap is off or loose. And then you go back and you put your gas cap back on, and then you drive another 100 miles or a couple hours, and then your check engine light goes off. But if you put if you hook a good enough scanner up to it, you'll still show a history code of that evap pollution of the gas cap being off, that it used to be a problem. Function tests. These get real interesting. It's where it's using that bidirectional communication, asking the scan tool to talk to the car and have it run a test on something. Okay, so we talked a little bit about terminology. Let's jump into OBD1. So when you think of OBD1, I just want you to think of 80s, early 90s, and early years of fuel injection. So kind of the vehicles that I'm showing on there, that's kind of what I want you to think of when you think of OBD1. Typically can't do any bidirectional communication with OBD1 and a scanner. Couple makes you can, very, very little, but generally speaking, the car is going to tell you what it thinks is wrong, and that's the end of the story. And the coolest part about it is you don't actually need a code reader to read your codes if you have an OBD1 vehicle. Now, if you want to get fancy and you want to hook an OBD, there is such a thing as an OBD1 code reader. If you want to hook it up, you can. However, the connectors are not standardized for OBD1. So if you're going to read codes on a BMW, you're going to have this circular plug here, Canon plug, what a lot of people call them. But if you're going to read codes on a Nissan, you're going to have this little square plug. They vary a lot. So that's one downside of OBD1 is you can't just hook can't buy one scanner and hook it up to all of them. You have to have an adapter kit like this. Also, they could be anywhere. These connectors could literally be anywhere. I'm going to tell you on Fords, on early 90s Fords, they're right up in here by the firewall, and they're hard to find. They hide them down in there in a wire bundle, and they're tough to find. Here's that BMW Canon plug connector, right? On some Hondas, you actually have to go under the dash, take out a kick panel on, I think it's the passenger side, and you actually have to find the connector inside of a big wire bundle like this and pull it down, and they may be showing it there, but it's kind of a pain. And here's on Fords, you actually need two of them. You need this connector and that connector. It's two of them. All right. That picture in the top right is an OBD1 scanner. That's a scan tool for OBD1 vehicles. At this point in time, go ahead and pause my video and watch this one and be amazed. All right, you should have just watched that video, and that's about all there is to it. I have not encountered an OBD1 vehicle yet that does not work on. There may be some out there, but everyone I've seen, if you look in the manual, there's a spot where you can jump a wire and you can read the codes, just like that. Now, if you really want to go all out and you want to spend a bunch of money, and money's not an option, and you don't care about the paperclip, you want the best OBD1 scanner you can get, that's all you need to pay. You could argue that one and say, well, you could buy an OBD2 scanner and hook adapters up to read whatever Ford you're working on, and then you could graph data. Yes, I could see where you're going with that, but just to read codes, that's the best one you can get. So low cost. Okay. Another thing is OBD1 codes are typically only for engine type stuff. Typically, they don't have transmission and suspension codes, air conditioning, that type of thing. Typically, it's just engine. And as you can see for this vehicle, I think this is from a Honda manual. As you can see, it says if codes other than those listed are indicated, verify the code. If the code indicated still not listed, replace the ECU. So essentially they're saying this is all the codes you should get, period, ever on this car. And if you get any other codes that aren't this, you got a big problem with your main computer, and it shouldn't even be spitting that out. So not very many. That's not a lot of codes. Simple. Okay, that was OBD1. We will, at some point, we'll obviously check codes on an OBD1 vehicle, but let's go ahead and jump now to OBD2. Okay, used from approximately 1996 to now. This is the big difference between 1 and 2. Gen 1, Gen 2 is you can hook a scan tool up to this vehicle and you can tell it to do certain things with your scan tool or laptop. And you got to have a code reader. And also, your code reader will be able to access not just the engine. It might be able to talk to the transmission as well. My gosh, it could even talk to the power door locks on some vehicles, that type of stuff. OBD2 also has a standardized connector. So that's good news. You don't have to buy that adapter kit anymore that you saw in the earlier slide for OBD1. You can just buy one scan tool and it will work with all of them. Even some motorcycles have this, by the way. Finding the OBD2 port is a little easier. It can still be in a lot of different locations. Typically, it's going to be under the dash, somewhere near your knees or your ankles, as if you're the driver. However, go ahead and pause the video at this time and jump on this and play around with it for a couple minutes and just check a couple cars. Check your car, punch in the details of your friend's car, your neighbor's, whatever, and just look at where the OBD port is located. That's kind of a neat tool. All right, moving on. So when you're actually reading codes on OBD2, you got some options. First of all, you do need to have some sort of tool to do it. You can't just use the paperclip method. The paperclip method does work, and I think Honda lets you use it up through maybe 01, 02, 03. But generally speaking, most manufacturers, you're going to need an actual code reader. And of course, we talked about how codes can reflect multiple systems. So what I want you to get out of this slide is you've got some options here. There's your $12 option, the Elm 327 on Amazon. That needs to be paired with a smartphone to work. This is my favorite. For about $30, you can just get a code reader. It doesn't need to be paired with a phone. You just plug it in. It tells you the code. You can do a couple other things with it, but basically it just tells you your code. End of story. All you need to know. Have a good day. Okay. If you really want to go all out, you can start spending upwards of $1,000 to get something that'll have bidirectional communication, like we talked about earlier. If you really want to go crazy, this Bosch is about 13 grand. So it has all kinds of, it can load wiring diagrams and just all types of crazy stuff. So there you go. It's only money, right? All right. The codes are going to look a little different on OBD2. Remember on OBD1 that all the codes possible on that one Honda vehicle on OBD1, there were maybe 20 codes. They're all just engine related, and that was it. OBD2 could have hundreds, probably even thousands when you get to these new vehicles of codes. So here's the pattern they follow. Okay. Let's go ahead and throw an example up there. I think they're organized by system. Yep, by powertrain. If you just follow this chart, it'll tell you what type of code it is. So let's just learn by example here. P0443. Okay, P. It's a powertrain code. Has something to do with the engine and transmission, right? 0. It's a generic OBD code. That means it's not manufacturer specific. 443. Okay, 4. Auxiliary emissions. Okay, it's something that has to do with the emissions. 4.3, well, and that's just, we'd have to get the book out to figure out what that is. But just from looking at this, we can tell, just from using this chart, we can tell you that this is some sort of code that has to do with emissions on the vehicle. Let's try another one. P1298. Okay, P powertrain 1 vehicle. Okay, it's a manufacturer special code. This is not a generic OBD code. So we need to use that actual manufacturer manual to figure out what it is. And then 2, fuel and air metering, injector circuit. Okay, so it's something with fuel and air, have to do with the injectors. And then of course 98, we don't know what that means without pulling out the manual. All right. I want to be clear here. If you scan codes, you read codes on an OBD2 vehicle or one, OBD1 works too. If you run codes and you get something like this, P0303, okay, cylinder 3 misfire, this doesn't really tell you, it doesn't tell you the whole story, right? It just points you in a direction. There's a lot of reasons why cylinder 3 could be misfiring. It could be, spark plug's dirty. It could be a bad plug wire. It could be a bad coil. It could be a bad injector. Could be an oil leak that's dumping a bunch of oil into that cylinder, so it's not firing as well or efficiently. I mean, lots of things. Okay. Could be a bad injector. It could be a dirty injector. The list goes on and on. You still need to dig in and figure this out yourself. Still need to troubleshoot and diagnose. Okay. And don't always trust everything the computer says. Again, something like this, computer's saying, hey, cylinder 3 is not running right. That's all it's telling you. It could be an oil leak. It could be, let's say your engine's got excessive blow-by and your PCV system maybe isn't working correctly, and it's pulling all this oil vapor in through the intake manifold and it's following out cylinder 3. Well, that has nothing to do, it's not cylinder 3's fault. It's your PCV system's flowing too much. Okay, so just again, this just sends you in a direction. Don't take it as holy grail. All right. At this point in time, go ahead and complete your assignment on code revision scanners, part 1.